attendees have slowed down a little bit, so I think we'll get started. And if you see me distracted momentarily, it's because I'm letting new people in. For those of us who just joined in the last few minutes, we invite you to share your location in the chat. And it's just been really fun to see all the different places that people are joining us this evening, or whatever the time is in your time zone. My name is Alison Crites. I'm the manager of exhibitions and interpretive engagement at the Southern Vermont Arts Center. We are just so thrilled to host this program tonight, to host this exhibition, and to share in this set of conversations with the artists who have graciously put a lot of time into their presentations tonight. So thank you in advance to April and Jennifer and Yoonmi and Katsu for all the time that they put into preparing their comments. Just a few housekeeping things. We are recording the conversation tonight, and we'll be putting that on our website. It might take us a couple of days to do that, but do know that if you want to return to the talk to revisit it in the future, it will be there for you. And also, if you know of other people who might enjoy listening to this conversation, please share the link from our website. And before I introduce our speakers tonight, I did just want to begin with a thank you to a very special person who is here with us, and that is Patty Hudak. So Patty, if you could just give a quick wave for everyone. Wow. Patty has been an incredible partner in this journey. She really is the person who had the original vision to bring a Mokuhanga exhibition to SVAC. She had the foresight to anticipate how special this exhibition, how meaningful it would be for so many people. And it's actually kind of a funny story about how this all came about. Patty was in my office. She stopped by to say hello, and she was helping hang an exhibition for a friend in August. And she was in my office and immediately homed in on this Hiroshige print that I had on my wall. And she started asking all these questions, and I explained that it was on loan to me from a local collector whom I was working with to plan a Hiroshige exhibition to open in November. And you could see the wheels were turning already. And a couple of days later, I got an email from Patty proposing a companion exhibition. And I actually looked back at that email before tonight, and the best line in it is that she promises not to be too pushy. And if you know Patty, she is never pushy, but she is gently persistent. And I'm just so thankful to her for proposing this idea and for being just a gracious collaborator. It's been wonderful working with you, Patty, and I'm just in awe of what we were able to pull together in only about 4 months, which as many of you know, is kind of like light years in museum time. So a big round of applause to Patty.
Thank you. I would also, I think it just, it just sort of speaks to this community. I mean, it's like it was a pyramid kind of chain link thing that kind of brought the show together. And I think I was really surprised until it went up. But yeah, this response has been, so many of you are in different parts of the world and in the country, and you haven't been able to hear people's response, but it's extraordinary. People are just like crazy about these prints. So we'll have more news coming, but for now, just enjoy the evening. It's wonderful. Thank you, Alison.
Thank you, Patty. And I'd also like to thank the Mokuhanga sisters, of which Patty is a member of this printmakers collective, women artists who all met over the last couple of years in Japan during residencies they were taking at the esteemed Mokuhanga Innovation Lab. This group of women have been meeting via Zoom and staying connected for several years now. And for this exhibition, for those of you who haven't had a chance to see it yet, the sort of the foundational concept is that each Mokuhanga sister invited someone that they regard as either a teacher or a student to participate in the exhibition. And so that kind of forms the core group of artists who are showing. And then Patty had this wonderful idea to extend invitations to a few more printmakers who are part of the extended community of Mokuhanga practitioners in the United States. So in all, there are 21 artists who are represented in the world between the block and the paper, living and working all over the world. And 4 of those artists are with us tonight. And I will get to some brief introductions in just a minute, but just to explain to you how we decided to structure the program, I asked each artist to think about and prepare some slides in response to kind of 3 main questions that I threw their way. So the first was, how did you come to or discover the art form of Mokuhanga, and what about it resonates with you? The second was, what unique visual language or technique have you developed that's visible in your work? And the third question was, how can Mokuhanga be used to address and open up conversations about some of the most pressing issues of our time? So those will be the responses, the questions that are guiding the artist responses this evening. So now I'll take just a moment to introduce each of them, and then we'll turn it over to our first presenter. At the end of their presentations, we'll have time for Q&A. So please kind of hold your questions back until that time. That being said, if you want to drop it in the chat as we're moving along, that's fine. I'll be moderating the chat when we get to that portion of the presentation. So our first speaker this evening is Yoonmi Nam, who was born in Seoul, Korea, and now resides in Kansas, where she's been a professor of printmaking at the University of Kansas since 2001. Yoonmi is interested in the observation and depiction of everyday objects and occurrences, especially when they subtly suggest contradictions. For example, conveying a sense of place that feels both familiar and foreign. Yoonmi received her MFA from RISD in Providence, Rhode Island, and a BFA from Hong-Ik University in Seoul, Korea. Also joining us is April Vollmer, an artist and educator based in New York City. April has an MFA from Hunter College and has exhibited all over the United States and abroad. In 2004, she began specializing in Mokuhanga, and in 2015, she published an excellent book called Japanese Woodblock Print Workshop that explores the contemporary use of Mokuhanga. And if you're interested, you can purchase that online, or you can come to the SVAC gift shop for a few more weeks and find it there. April actively promotes cultural exchange through the study of Mokuhanga and was on the board of the 2011 and 2014 International Mokuhanga conferences that took place in Kyoto and Tokyo. The next artist with us tonight is Katsutoshi Yuasa, who was born in Tokyo, where he currently lives. As an undergrad, Katsu studied art in the oil painting department at Musashino Art University. He also earned a master's from the Royal College of Art in London. Katsu has participated in over 15 artist residencies around the world. And in his work, Katsu explores a relationship between photography and printmaking. His work often begins with his own digital photograph, which he reinterprets layer by layer as a woodblock print. And lastly, we are joined tonight by Jennifer Mack-Watkins, whose primary studio practice entails silkscreen and Japanese woodblock prints. Jennifer's work investigates the societal constructs that can leave women feeling isolated, and she explores definitions of femininity based on widely held notions of beauty and cultural norms. Jennifer is a native of Charleston, South Carolina, and she received her bachelor's in studio arts from Morris Brown College, a master's in teaching from Tufts University, and also an MFA in printmaking from Pratt. So thank you again to the artists for everything they've done to prepare tonight. I will turn things over to Yoonmi to get us started.
Hey, thank you, Alison. I'm gonna share my screen real quick. Start the slideshow. Okay. So many artists come to Mokuhanga because of their interest in Japanese culture, or perhaps their desire to work in less toxic medium. My journey to Mokuhanga was a little bit different. When I was in graduate school, I began making large print installation works that explored how printed marks can exist in a space and how we can offer an experience for the viewer through these installations. These are lithographs printed on gampi paper. Often my professors and my peers would reference Chinese landscape paintings in relation to these works. And this was when I was introduced to a couple of woodblock printed books from China. These books are called The Mustard Seed Garden Manual of Painting and Ten Bamboo Studio. They're woodblock printed painting manuals from 17th century China. It is significant as an important ink painting manual that spread widely throughout Asia at that time and still continues to spread worldwide. It is also an important example of early color woodblock printing in China. Throughout history, it was published in many different countries and in different languages, using a variety of printing techniques from woodblock printing to offset printing. It continues to be enjoyed by many artists all over the world. These books also include thumbnail images of different examples on how to paint certain subject matter, such as all the different ways in which an artist can use brush strokes to depict various kinds of leaves on trees. They also presented the order and method in which one can paint orchids or bamboo using a specified sequence of brush strokes. An artist in training could examine these different ways of using brush strokes and study them by copying them and creating their own imagery. Because of this, you can see that it was important to carve these wood blocks so that the printed images look just like brush painting. I recall going to a museum with an appointment to see the Mustard Seed Garden Manual of Painting in their collection with one of my professors. We looked through the stab-bound woodblock printed pages, and I finally saw the details of the carving and the water-based pigment printed surfaces that are clearly different from the Western oil-based woodblock prints. The introduction of these old woodblock printed books and the experience of viewing them closely launched a curiosity in me that began my journey in Mokuhanga. My first Mokuhanga residency was at Nagasawa Art Park in 2004, where I learned the traditional carving and printing techniques from master craftspeople. I returned to the residency 2 more times in 2012 and then again in 2019, now called MiLab, which had relocated to Kawaguchiko. For me, learning these techniques was an eye-opening experience and allowed me to understand why I hadn't noticed the traditional Asian woodblock prints that were all around me while growing up in Korea. These water-based woodblock prints lacked a certain printed look of a typical Western oil-based prints that I was more familiar with, such as this oil-based woodcut prints by German artist Kathy Kollwitz. These Western-style oil-based woodblock prints had expressive and textured surfaces, resulting from the use of carving tools such as the U-gouge or the V-gouge, and these carved marks were left visible in the impression. However, traditional Asian woodblock carving was primarily done using a knife called hangito to accurately carve out lines to imitate the brush strokes of a painter, rather than allowing the mark of the carving tool to be visible. The pigment used to print was also water-based, creating a subtle and translucent watercolor-like impression on paper. I'm interested in many aspects of water-based woodblock printing, but today I will talk about just one of them, using one of my prints as an example. I'm interested in the relationship between the hand-drawn marks, painted marks, and printed marks, and I explore these relationships in my work. Because I lived in different places with different cultures growing up, the idea of translation and imitation was inherent to how I understood and navigated the world. And this is something that I continue to think about in my work as well. This is one of my Mokuhanga prints in the exhibition. I depicted the front and the back of a found postcard. This postcard was sent in July 1941 by Dick, who was vacationing in Alaska, to Frank, who lives in Rochester, New York. In my works, I'm always interested in when something presents me with a contradicting sense of time, a time that feels both fleeting and permanent. A postcard is a physical object that marks an intangible experience, such as a vacation. Yet, a postcard is an ephemera, which means that it is a printed material intended for circulation with a specific purpose and usage, but then they're generally meant to be discarded. However, ephemera often becomes mementos, and in contrast to its original intention, they're put in a box or in a scrapbook to be preserved and remembered. The scene depicted in this postcard is of the Mendenhall Glacier in Alaska. Glacier is also a subject matter that I experience a contradicting sense of time. While the scene of this massive glacier may have felt enduring and permanent in the past, melting of glacier due to climate change now makes us see them as something that is impermanent and even fleeting. Technically, I think the slide is going to turn soon. Here it is. Technically, I wanted to explore the relationship between hand-drawn marks and printed marks. My image of these postcards are a reproduction of a reproduction. I first made a watercolor drawing of the front and the back of the postcard, essentially hand drawing all the text part of the postcard as images. After the drawing was transferred to the wood blocks, the carving method that I employed was the method used in traditional Japanese carving using a knife called hangito to accurately trace the drawn marks. For the text part of the postcard on the back, I scanned my hand-drawn text and used a laser cutter to carve them. In this case, the machine was imitating my hand-drawn marks. On the left, you can see the laser cut block with some additional hand carving that I did around the laser cut image. And on the right, you can see the same block with the sumi ink stain left on the block. Here are some more examples of the laser cut wood blocks with additional hand carving. In the image on the left, you can see the postmark in the bottom left. In the image on the right, you can see the detail of the handwritten message and the address. And here's the 4 images showing the sequence of the printing from left to right. Finally, for printing, I approached the types of the text differently to imitate the nature of these texts. The Mendenhall Glacier information on the top left, as well as the word postcard, and other printed images that comes with the postcard was printed solidly, while the postmark image was intentionally printed badly to imitate the nature of the speedy and mechanical printing of the postmark. Also, for Dick's handwritten message using a fountain pen, I selectively inked different parts of the text darker or lighter to imitate the way a fountain pen deposits different amount of ink on the paper, depending on the speed and pausing of the handwriting. Thank you.
Amazing.
Yep, really nice. Shall I share my screen now? Okay, let's see.
Yes, please.
I think I'm next. Oops, I thought I had it set up. Where am I? Oh, sorry. Oh. My. Sorry. I was sure I had it set properly.
No problem.
Hello, my name is Pardon me. Why am
There you go.
Okay, sorry. Here we go. My name is April Vollmer. I'm a New York City artist, author, and educator with a master's degree from Hunter College in New York. And I've specialized in Mokuhanga since I participated in the Nagasawa Art Park program in 2004. My book, Japanese Woodblock Print Workshop on the Contemporary Use of Mokuhanga, was released by Watson Guptill in 2015. And this is the cover. This is the cover of the book. It's called Zova. It's a print called Zova, and it was selected by the graphic designer of the book, Nami Kurita. I first studied Mokuhanga after graduate school with artist Bill Payden, who had lived in Kyoto. This was in New York. But my deeper understanding of Mokuhanga came in 2004 when Keiko Kadota invited me to participate in the Nagasawa Art Park residency program. And that's when I first met Yoonmi and Katie and other people. Amazing opportunity. When I was in art school in New York, Hiroshige's seductive fishes were always in the back of my mind, but Japan seemed impossibly far away. I couldn't get anyone to teach me about Japanese woodblock in graduate school. It just wasn't a thing at that time in the 80s. At Hunter College, I worked primarily in etching. In the years after, I worked in oil painting, then drawing. I used the sharp point of the pencil to make work that was precise and specific, more idea-based and literal than the Mokuhanga woodcuts that followed. These are two drawings in colored pencil on black paper. And these are the woodcuts that came directly afterward. I made these working with Bill Payden in New York, and it shows how immediately my work changed, focusing much more on color and texture. The shapes were now determined by the physicality of cutting rather than the fluid precision of the pencil. I also began to use the white of the paper as part of the image. Before, I had drawn on black paper and painted on shaped wood panels to avoid the white rectangle of the picture plane. One of the most complex prints I made was Delirious Birds and Bees from 2007. It's an autobiographical self-portrait printed from a variety of blocks I cut between 1995 and 2007, when this print was featured at an extensive exhibition at the Brooklyn Botanic Gardens Steinhardt Gallery. Blocks from earlier prints gave me a library of shapes to work with, elements I could rotate and recombine to generate a new image. Here are 6 of the prints that made up portions of that image. The Hummingbirds with Banksia is from the Santa Cruz Arboretum. Cherry Quarter was from a residency at the University of St. Mary's in Maryland. Explode, the little cherry, was begun at Virginia Center for the Creative Arts. And Wasp Dance was based on insects I found at the Nagasawa Art Park in the Japanese countryside back in 2004. This is another series created using blocks with an image of the Willis Avenue Bridge in New York, combined with electrical pylons. And that's a cormorant hanging down. They sit on the pylons. But you see, I use the same blocks in several different formats. Mokuhanga gives me the freedom to explore ideas in depth through repetition. I used the same 18th century Mexican silver chandelier block in Delta on the left, with an image of the Mississippi River Delta, in Blackout with a single fern block printed multiple times in different densities, and in Cupola with a digital architectural background. I plan images in Photoshop, managing color separations by eye, and I carve freely, letting the process shape the image. These two prints are made from the same blocks, printed in radically different colors to make two entirely different prints. It's not just a different color, but a different, some of the blocks I didn't use in both, and it's a different orientation on the paper. Contemporary artists from Andy Warhol to Robert Rauschenberg and Jasper Johns use ideas drawn from printmaking. But I'm particularly inspired by the work of contemporary artists like Nancy Sparrow with her fierce political underpinning, Philip Taffy with his elegant repetitions of natural form, and Barbara Takanaga, who uses repeated form in both painting and printmaking to create an entry into other worlds. All these artists generate ideas through a free use of print technologies. They don't necessarily even do prints or woodcut, but they use those ideas. In my earlier work, I addressed environmental concerns literally. Mokuhanga is more indirect. Its tactile surface suggests physical presence and a connection to the natural world. In breathing in and breathing out, I use the repeated form of the lotus flower to suggest the rhythms of breathing. I can convey complex meanings by layering blocks to create an interchange between nature and culture. In this series, I inserted patterns of crane flies or birds into classical fret patterns based on the engravings of ancient Greek ceramic vases collected in Naples by Sir William Hamilton in the 17th century. I don't know, that might be a little like the way Yoonmi looks at earlier Chinese prints and books. Mokuhanga prints record the sharpness of the knife, the texture of the washi, the pressure of the baren, the humidity of the day. The embossment reflects the slant of light at a particular time. I include carving marks or the paper decal to identify the print as a physical object rather than the picture of something else. I often imply my own presence by including hands. Mokuhanga can convey the urgency of the moment with a shadow, a color gradation, a repetition. Its methodical processes display a clarity of intention. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, April. And
Thank
now
you.
we're gonna turn it over to Katsu.
Excellent.
Yeah.
There's my screen.
Okay. My name is Katsutoshi Yuasa. I studied fine art at Musashino Art University. At first, I mainly made oil paintings, but when I met Ayumi Yoshida, who is the grandchild of the Hiroshi Yoshida, I realized the potential of the woodblock print as contemporary art. I started to make woodblock print based on the photographs because I was not happy with the texture of the photographs. Therefore, I needed to find a new way of output the photograph. After the graduating from Musashino Art University, I went to the UK for studying contemporary printmaking at Royal College of Art in London. Japan has a long history of the woodblock print since the introduction of woodblock print and paper making technology from China during the Nara period. During the Edo period, the common people could not easily go on the journey except for the purpose of the worship. While free travel was restricted, ukiyo-e print, such as the 53 stations of the Tokaido, served to supplement the travel mood of the common people. So this is the 16th station, Yui, from Hiroshige's 53 stations of the Tokaido. There was a difficult point that afflicted travelers called Satta Pass. Satta Pass has been an important trunk line for many years, but it was a difficult place. But now a highway, highway has been built on the sea, and the train can run by cutting cliffs. You can watch the live footage from various locations on YouTube. A video camera is also installed at Satta Pass. This is a totally same location as Hiroshige's print. So you can see the current situation 24 hours a day. I think YouTube is today's ukiyo print because we can see and enjoy everyday landscape of the world through the screen. So this is the same point from different time. However, our sense of the time is completely different from Edo period and the present. Travelers in Edo period took 2 weeks on foot from Nihonbashi in Tokyo to Sanjo Ohashi in Kyoto. Currently, it takes just 2 hours and 10 minutes by Shinkansen from Tokyo to Kyoto. The travel time has become much faster, but the feeling of enjoying the trip itself has disappeared. Moreover, we are less likely to think, imagine, or pray for something during our journey. We couldn't travel freely during the pandemic, so I decided to make a series of the work using the woodwork print technique based on the footage from this live camera. It took about 2 weeks to carve 10 wood blocks. While carving a board with the chisels, I was thinking about various things. It was like a journey of imagination. In this series, I decided to use the same wood blocks, but change the colors to express the 4 seasons. In the next, I thought about making the London landscape based on the live video of the YouTube as well. I think this is also a modern version of ukiyo prints. The reason for including emoji, time, and thumbnails in the work is to emphasize that it is different from the ordinary photographs. Prints do not move like images, but I think printmaking is art of the method, so it contains the concept of the time. That is why I am not making prints, but images. Last summer, when the number of the people infected with COVID-19 dropped a little, I had the opportunity to make own paper in Nishi-Aizu, Fukushima Prefecture. It was the first time for me to make the paper by myself, starting from steaming the kozo, mulberry. The paper made from mulberry, water, and light collected in Nishi-Aizu has become very strong and beautiful. For the first time, I felt that paper was alive. The paper is part of the nature, and paper is made by borrowing a part of it. The virtual imaginary journey in my head is important, but I felt like I was brought back to reality by the intense power of the nature. I once again thought that woodwork prints were born out of the relationship with nature. So this is the work I made just after visiting Nishi-Aizu and printed on my own paper. Thank you so much. So more information is on my website.
Thank you so much, Katsu.
Thank you.
And Jennifer, don't forget to unmute yourself.
Hello, I'm Jennifer Mack-Watkins, and I'm going to share with you my journey of Mokuhanga and why I choose to do what I do. My journey towards the discovery of Mokuhanga began with the foundational study of printmaking practiced by attending a historically Black college and university, Morrisbond College in Atlanta, Georgia. The school was part of a larger network, so I was able to take classes at Morris Brown College, Clark Atlanta, and Spelman. And during that time, I was able to learn about very important African-American printmakers and artists, Nancy Prophet, sculpture, Hale Woodruff, painter, and W. Du Bois was a professor there. And so all this history was part of my experience growing up and being able to learn more about just the practice of printmaking. During that time, there was homecomings, there were bands, and I had awesome professors, rest in peace, Louis Dossart and Roosevelt Leonard. And I got a chance to even think about how I could see myself as doing printmaking after I finished undergraduate. I also discovered artists, really important artists that I really enjoy and really look up to, is Elizabeth Catlett. Along with Elizabeth Catlett, I learned about African-American printers, John Biggers, Hale Woodruff, William Jennings, and Charles White. I really fell in love with Elizabeth Catlett's cuts and technical ability to be able to take something as simple as taking a carving tool and making the repetitive marks and being able to develop a sharp contrast and shadow and taking social injustices and issues that happen in our world and put it in print form. My earlier work, this was a portfolio that I created before I attended graduate school. And I was really always looking at like, hey, how do prints look around the world? So I started to investigate printmaking. I even did a little collage back in 2004. So I applied to Pratt Institute with the same portfolio and I got in. And so during that time, I was able to think about I was able to look at to see how I could take my Western influence of carving and leaving the marks. And then even thinking about how I can think about getting outside the matrix and totally tearing my prints up. So I would make these prints that were squared and they're all different colors, but this is the print that I made in 2015, but I graduated from Pratt Institute in 2009. So I kind of took the same idea and made it more complex by adding more colors, but it's very similar to my thesis show. And I tore it up and I rearranged and made an installment on 3 walls. And this happened in New York City. And it was really fun to just think about thinking boundariously, no boundaries, taking up space. And I always thought about how, it's fun to work small, but it's also helpful to understand how I can use my print in different ways to make a voice. Then after I graduated from graduate school, I discovered April Vollmer. And so I ended up taking her class at the Lower East Side Print Shop 6 times. And I think I'm gonna go off my paper. I don't want to leave out any details. But later, after attending graduate school, I began taking Mokuhanga classes with scholar April Vollmer at the Lower East Side Print Shop. Her teaching style allowed me to create my printmaking style by learning more about the techno aspect and planning ahead the results I wish to create. I use Mokuhanga as a way to use this space to share my perspective on how I view the world. I wanted to also think about I wanted to start with this print because this is the first print that I made when I got to Japan. I ended up going to Japan twice. I went in 2015 to a residency, and this is one of the first prints I created, but I also wanted to use that time to think about my journey in getting to Japan and what it meant to travel, outside, outside of my comfort zone and going to a whole nother culture. And so I wanted to kind of think about how can I document my own history through history that has already been in place. And the histories are not always histories that you always want to remember and think about, but I think it's important for us to address it and to remember if that's what you feel like you want to do. And so eventually I thought about the fact that I had the freedom to be able to go over to Japan with no restrictions, right? With no one to say, you have to say here or there. And but I also wanted to pay homage to the history that what it took for many African Americans to be able to travel throughout the United States at a time when Jim Crow was trying to make sure that we didn't have opportunities to do so. And I had opportunity to do so. And that's why I chose to do the arrival, my first prints when I got there. And I also want to think about, okay, so what does travel look like in the 1940s? So I'm really into like the aesthetics of the 1940s, 1950s, the style, the dress, sometimes the backgrounds you can kind of see in some of my works. But I wanted to compare this print and this vintage photograph by Ryu and the vintage photograph that you can see of the woman. This is a totally different time periods, 1899 versus 1942. But I just wanted to show like how no matter what, travel has continued to take place, and it gives you the sense of freedom and something to look forward to, no matter how you travel or how you get there. And that's how I felt when I came to Japan. And so when I got to Japan, I noticed that there's a lot of nature. You know, I was living, you know, in New York City, and I was like, there's a lot of nature around. So I was like, I have to do something with this. So I started to look deeper at some of the collections of the libraries that we had at Me Laboratory. I looked at tons of books, did tons of sketches, and I just started to think, okay, what does it look like outside? And so then what I noticed the most about looking at many of the Japanese prints, and you can see here that I was really fascinated by the weather, and I never even used weather in my work before, but I was like, I have to do this. And so I decided to think about Hershey's like the rain, right? And I wanted to think about like what makes Japanese woodblocks important to me, and what I noticed is the five senses. And I wanted to break this down a little bit further because I thought about the five senses, and I wanted to make sure that I was able to use that in my own work. And the five senses to me, if you break down Hershey's print, the smell of the rain, before it rains, the storm comes, you can tell the storm is coming. The rain is here, so now you have the sense of touch, and now you're wet, right? And the bridge is slippery. In the hearing, you hear the rain come down. And so I wanted to think about, when you see the rain come down. So I wanted to really put that into my own work, kind of mark it with time about what's happening around myself. And it's basically is an autobiographical print that I made about myself, just coming to Japan. And the letter on the ground is like the contract of me not going back to my job, and I'm going to Japan no matter what. And so it was just basically more about my journey and how I got there. And my connection to Mokuhanga, I always tell a lot of people this, is that it's one of the mediums to me that really makes you slow down. It really makes you think about, okay, what's going to happen if I cut like this, and like and that's with any printmaking material. But for me, it really makes me slow down. I'm not just thinking like gouging out, like I'm taking my time. I'm delicately, carving away areas I want to leave, and makes me think well ahead. Plenty of preparation of drawings, and everyone here, most people practice Mokuhanga, but you totally understand where I'm coming from. And I really think that the slowness really gravitates me more to do more of this medium. And I really enjoy mixing the colors, whether it be color dispersions, which is applying the pigment and water, mixing it thin enough so that you can have kind of like a not too pasty, but a liquidy kind of feel, enough that you can, apply it to the wood to get the results that you would like. I just like being able to have control over mixing colors. And the brushes that are handmade, and they're very rare. I can't go to Michael's, I can't go to Hobby Lobbies. I have to go in order. I have to take the time to really plan ahead. And sometimes I have to even order from some suppliers in Japan. So I feel like just the rarity of the tools, it's almost like the tools that I have are like collectibles. The medium allows you to be able to work anywhere, from your home to a studio, outside if you want to, and it's a very transportable medium. So the concept of my work, I really try to focus on my own experiences, how I view the world. It could be historical, it could be, how I'm feeling at the time, the place of the woman, the place of me being African-American in a space. that I choose to, represent myself in different ways. Like I can take control of a domesticated space. I could be at a small desk, just glamifying myself and feeling beautiful about myself. So my art, I hope to be able to celebrate and to motivate people to continue to love themselves and continue to see the beauty in that we have in each other. I also like to think about the children. I think children need art too, right? So I have children at home too. And so I wanted to also make work, this is called Take a Look, The Universe is Yours, to kind of like give reference to Reading Rainbow, one of my favorite shows when I was growing up when I was younger. And also thinking about science and reading and how they're really important. So this piece, I wanted to motivate, other people, not just children, but just motivate people to learn and embrace learning and reading. And this is one of my solo shows that I had in New Jersey. And it was the first time I got a chance to be able to showcase all of my prints in one room. And that was a really great experience. And then we come to modern day. This is the show in Vermont, which I don't know if I'll be able to see it, but I really was really honored to be able to be a part of this exhibition because it brought everybody from all over the world to bring together their love and passion for Mokuhanga. And then I also have some other shots of what I have in the show. Duck and cover, I also look at themes of education and what's going on in society at the time. I'm an educator, so many people associate this with the nuclear bomb, drills, and I associate it with like, my modern day as a teacher, with gun violence in the schools and how I actually had to do the drills. And so I wanted to think about putting that on paper and make people think more about the safety of children and the importance of how we need to think about we can make sure that they're safe in the spaces and teachers as well. And this is called The Conqueror. This is a print that I created in Japan during my residency. And it's more of like, again, like how I felt on top of the world to be able to come to Japan through the challenges that took for me to get there. And when I was there, I learned a lot. And I also had Katsu was my teacher when I was there, and you might have remember seeing this print. But I just remember it was just a really fun time to be able to take nature and incorporate that with and make it in motion through the works that I decided to create. This is No Place Like Home. I created this during the quarantine time. And so I wanted to think about how it was for me to feel the heaviness of being able to provide for my family and protect them and make sure that they're safe. And I made this print as a way to like think about the heaviness of the pandemic during the time, and just not just a pandemic, just like motherhood. And other printmaking techniques I choose to experiment with would be cut paper collage. I like to see how that transfers into risograph. I did a risograph photograph literary project book that I got a chance to see how my work was going to be transferred to risograph. And I silkscreen, I did Children of the Sun. My first solo exhibition was in Brattleboro Museum. Lithograph is the top middle with the stars in the background, Black Boy Hope. And I like to be able to go back and forth between all different types of printmaking because I really enjoy how they change and how they're very similar and how they can find different nuances and different styles. I could make sure it transfers to no matter what I choose to make. I think the most important thing about the Mokuhanga community is like how international and how embracing, how sharing, how supportive we are to one another. And I remember that moment when I went to the first time, 2014, April was like, you should go, Japan, to the conference. I was like, I don't know. And I was like, okay, I'll go. And I got a chance to go. I presented, and it was very embracing. People were very supportive. And then 2016 was in Hawaii, and that was the last time we were all together. But I'm hoping that we can be together soon. And one of the artists that I got a chance to really investigate more was in 2019, I got a chance to see Sakino's prints in person at the Harvard Museum. And I'm really fascinated by him because he chose to put children. And for the first time, I was like, who is this? I looked very closely at the signature and I was like, I have to learn more about him. And I decided to study and research him for the Mokuhanga conference. And I think I would like to end with this slide with Keiko Kadoda, but I want to read off of a statement that I thought that can kind of like see how I feel like the future of Mokuhanga is and how supportive the community is. And if you could take a moment, think about Keiko Kadoda and how important she was to bring us here together. I wish she was here. I feel that Mokuhanga can be used to address contemporary issues, concerns by continuing to do the work of promoting Mokuhanga. and recognizing the power it has to share our work of printmakers, artists all over the world that can be used to demonstrate the diversity and inclusiveness of the medium by style and expressiveness, inspiration, and subject can connect each person by a person to unify us together as the international community of Mokuhanga. So sorry, but thank you for listening. If you want to contact me, here's my information here. Alison can get you when I'm not looking like this, but thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. Those were really powerful words to end on. So thank you for sharing those thoughts around just the power of this medium and how it can bring people together. We're coming up close on the hour, but since we started a couple minutes late, hopefully people are able to stay with us for a few minutes, because I do want to make sure to ask any questions that our audience members have. That was just such a enriching set of presentations, and I feel like my synapses are firing all sorts of kind of interesting connections to think about. I jotted down a few notes, just the way that some of your work is showing us really innovative ways where you're integrating modern technology. Yoonmi, you mentioned your use of laser cut. April, you talked about how you're using Photoshop to help you create compositions in advance. Katsu, of course, you're referencing webcams and security camera footage and drawing from that imagery into your work. So I think that's a really interesting area to explore. I also was thinking about how many of you are exploring your personal or sort of humanities relationship with the natural world. Some of you are touching on issues of climate change. Katsu, you shared such a wonderful story about your experience making paper and sort of the physical connection, the tactile connection to the paper making process, and how you felt closer to the natural world through that. Jennifer, you mentioned the way that the Hiroshige prints sort of inspired you to think about weather and all its sensory elements, and how you could work to bring that into your own prints. And then this concept of time, Jennifer, you talked about how the process of carving really encourages you to slow down and sort of reconnect with time in a different way. Katsu, again, sort of the slowness of the process it takes to make paper, that you really gained a lot of appreciation for the material that way. And Yoonmi, I mean, just, man, the way you broke down that postcard and your attention to so many details, the pressure of the ink and how you were able to capture that in the print itself, which is totally incredible. So thank you again to the four artists for and bringing up these really interesting concepts, and I love seeing these connections amongst your work. I am going to take a look at the chat now, so it would be a good time if anyone has a particular question to drop it in there. There is one, oops, wait, where'd it go? People are adding things. Liz is curious if there is a good resource for learning to sharpen your tools. So a very specific process from someone who, it sounds like, is making prints herself. Do any of the presenters have thoughts on tool
There's
sharpening?
a whole fabulous video by Shoichi Kitamura, right?
Yeah,
on
I
our-
just posted on the chat because the
on our
Mokuhanga
YouTube channel,
conference, Mokuhanga conference videos are all available to public now. So anybody can go watch all the presentation and demonstrations.
I found it a little confusing. There's so many, but Shoichi Kitamura is a fabulous master printer who did a great carving demonstration. And that's all documented on that. And the YouTube channel is International Mokuhanga YouTube channel.
It looks like maybe Ben dropped in a link here. So that I haven't opened it up, but I don't know if that's related to what you're talking about, April, or if that's a separate resource that he's suggesting.
I think that's a different one, but Patty has a link also.
Oh, great. Thank you, Patty. Oh, and then, okay, he clarified that the link he sent is to Terry McKenna, who's another artist in the exhibition. It's a whole book that he has written about tool sharpening.
There's so much information now. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you so much.
When I wrote my book, it was very hard to find information in English. And now there's so many resources and videos.
So then we have another question. How many blocks have each of the presenters carved throughout your lifetime? So that's really a fun question to think about. And then where do you store them, and how often do you revisit them and possibly reprint from them?
I reuse mine a lot. I just store them vertically. Don't lie them flat. You have to store them vertically so they dry on both sides. But I reuse mine all the time. I have them right in the middle of my studio. So I guess that means I don't have that many. I keep reusing them.
I bet Katsu has the most number of blocks, I'm guessing.
No, I
But
carve
I mean,
a lot,
go
but most of them I throw away the blocks, so I don't keep the many.
How about Yoonmi and Jennifer? How many blocks do you think you've carved, or how do you store them?
I don't know. I don't know how many, but I do store some of them, but the only reason I keep blocks that I've already printed is occasionally I would use them just for demonstrations. So I just keep some of those so that I could just show how it's printed. But after the edition's done,
It's hard for people to visualize when they look at a print. It's hard for them to visualize how it exists as a three-dimensional thing, a block of wood it's a sculpture, like a really shallow sculpture.
Yeah, I think for me, I keep them and I box them up, and then when I do demonstrations or travel to do demonstrations or teachings of workshops, I print them for that. But like once I print an edition, I don't reprint them again, but I definitely save them for demonstrations.
So you have another question from Carrie. So she hasn't been able to see the show yet, and you're based in Ohio. Is it easy to get to Manchester? Sort of. You could fly into Albany, which is about an hour south of Manchester. So it's a pretty easy drive if you are able to get to Albany. You can fly in and out of there. So we hope you're able to make it. Patty, would you mind dropping in the link to the Mokuhanga Sisters website where people can see all those beautiful installation shots from the exhibition? Because that's a way to have sort of a virtual tour of the show if you're not able to make it in person.
Yeah, Patty's, you've done a great job documenting the show. Is it on, where is it? Is it on
you can see it on mokuhangasisters.com. There's an archive of the show, and you can kind of get a sense of what's there. I encourage people to go. I had two friends, Suzanne Russell, who's on this Zoom, and my sister came up yesterday from New York City. You can take the train to Albany. If you take the train that arrives in Albany at 12:55, there's a bus waiting for you there.
You're kidding.
We just found this out. Takes you right to Manchester.
I did not.
And I just wanted to say that the spaces, there's chairs in each room. So like it's in a house, a beautiful old house. So you kind of feel like hanging out. There's a library full of like hard to find books on Mokuhanga, tool catalogs, you can have lunch. Like it's really a destination.
And Manchester is nice.
Yeah, it's
There's
nice.
I mean, there's restaurants and shopping, and it's a lovely spot.
Skiing, if you like that, snowshoe, yeah.
Yeah.
So
I
yeah,
bet it's
so
snowy.
if you are able to get to Manchester, it's in the sort of, it's like in the lower west side of Vermont. So it's oddly kind of a day trip if you're in Boston, or even you could go from New York or Pennsylvania, or even for me, Vermont, northern Vermont. It's kind of a day trip from a lot of areas in the Northeast. Yeah, it's wonderful. It's a wonderful place to spend the day.
Thanks for the plug. We had another question comment specifically for Jennifer. How was your Finland experience and how has that affected your current work?
Oh, that's a great question. Finland is someplace that everyone in this virtual space should go to. It's a magical space. Yoonmi knows about it. She'll be there again this summer teaching an awesome class. But for me, I think it really affected my ability to understand how much time I needed to create works. I had 2 weeks and that's all I had. And I knew I had to have a schedule. I wrote down each day what my task was going to be. I went to sleep early, woke up, I had a routine. I had a routine for the first time. And I wanted to make sure I maximized my time when I was there. And I was able to produce, I carved 14 blocks in 2 weeks and printed them. And I also had a chance to even have extra time to do some silk screening and a little bit of intaglio. And so I had a chance to experiment towards the end after 3 cut fingers. But other than that, it was a great experience. And now I know, coming back to reality, when I got back, Andre, I know how long it takes for me to get something done. I need a full 8 hours. And that was how long I had each day. 8 hours. If I have 4 hours Monday and 4 hours, Friday, then that's 8 hours. And I think it helped me really understand the sense of time and how you can really push yourself to get things done. You can be out of your comfort zone, being in a new space, and being in a new space, not being comfortable. I think that was really pushed me to make sure I maximize my time. And it's something you have to experience. And not just Finland, but just any residency allows you to do that.
Residencies are so great.
Anyone. Yeah. Great question.
Well, I think maybe that leads us to sort of my final request from our speakers tonight. What are you up to next? Just tell us one thing that's in the near future for you, whether it's a Finland residency or a workshop you're teaching or another exhibition you plan to be a part of. So Yoonmi, can we start with you?
Sure. So Jennifer already talked about it a little bit, but I'll be teaching Mokuhanga workshop at Finland June, I think. So that's coming up, and I have a solo show coming up in Austin, Texas in September. So that's where all my time is going towards right now, preparing for that show. And also I'm in a group show at Nelson Atkins Museum in Kansas City. That's also coming up in October.
April, how about you? What's next?
Let's see. I've been invited to do a class here in Santa Cruz. I'm making connections with California these days, California Society of Printmakers. And I'm going to be in a show. There's some talk about another Mokuhanga show in New York at Kentler International. I'm hoping I can help with that. And I'm
awesome. Katsu?
Yeah, I have a group show starting next week, and I have a big solo exhibition in Switzerland in June. So I hope to be there, but it is really depending on the situation about the pandemic. I haven't been to the Europe these 2 years, so I hope to be there this year. really.
And Jennifer?
I'm currently like in a group show in Madison, Georgia. I'm going to be in a show in April, and then I'm waiting for the publication of my first children's book, which will be 34 pages of woodblock, Japanese woodblock, and that's going to be coming out next year. So stay tuned for that.
All right. Well, I think we are at time. Thank you for all the great questions and comments. Thank you for spending this time with us. And thank you again to Katsu and Yoonmi and Jennifer and April for your thoughtful presentations tonight. It's been a really wonderful experience.